The EBF Open Forum is a live Bible questions and answers program. What kind of Bible question do you have? What subject is of concern to you? Well, this is a program designed to offer you the opportunity to call in and ask questions or comments relating to the Bible. Our host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann, will respond by going to the Bible, the infallible Word of God. Our program is hosted Monday through Friday beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except Wednesdays, when the program begins at noon Eastern. Call our toll-free number at 888-969-9883. Again, that's 888-969-9883. There will be someone there to answer your call and give you simple instructions to be on the program. You can also join us through Zoom video by going to ebiblefellowship.org and clicking the icon at the top. If you're calling in from another country, on our website, select the toll-free button to find your country's number.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's new open forum program. During this time, we're going to open up the phone lines to take your call, and each person is invited to give us a call if you have a question or a comment that you would like to make about the Bible, and I'll try to respond by turning to the Bible to see what we can find out about the thing you're interested in. And we, again, are always encouraged and we're blessed whenever we can turn to the Bible and read this holy word, read this book of truth, because there's nothing like it anywhere in the world. This is the only one in existence. The Holy Bible, which is the Word of God, is unlike anything else, and it is supreme in its authority, in its integrity, in its honesty. There's not enough superlatives to heap upon it. It is the most glorious thing in all the world. And of course, you never know it by how the world treats it, how the world responds to it, living their life, so many in ignorance of it, or in outright rejection of it. And is that to tell us, is that an indication? Oh, since the world, views it as such a little thing, insignificant thing, or even the hostility of the world towards it. And we're talking about large numbers of people. Well, isn't that an indication that we shouldn't get near this book, that the world in its wisdom has deemed it as something unworthy, book of fantasies, and no. If the world deems something to be insignificant, rejects it, and does not consult it, well, run and grab it. Run and grab it, because what does the world know? And the answer to that question is out your window. Out your window. I don't care where you're at. It's a truth. You could be located in any city of the United States or Canada or any city in all the world, and I don't care. Look out your window. Take a look at the world's wisdom, the world's sense of right and wrong, the world's, the things they seek after. Does the world seek after that which is good for itself, and things that are honest and right and just and good? Complete opposite. The world goes after the dirty, rotten things, and the filthy things, the perverted things, the twisted things, the ugly things. And of course, when you're so busy with all that, you don't have much time for something that's good and righteous and pure and holy. It doesn't interest them. It doesn't attract them because of man's fallen nature. Man goes after the things that match his fallen nature. And it's only when God changes a man and gives him a new nature, one of holiness. That's what a saint is. And everyone who's saved has their sins washed away. They become righteous and holy and just in God's sight. And therefore, they're giving a desire to pursue that which is after their new nature, the Bible, only the Bible, no other religious book, no other religion, definitely not anything of the secular world, just the Bible. And you see, one goes after according to their heart, and they seek that which is in tune with their nature. And so men go away from the Bible, the holy, righteous Bible, and towards the garbage, towards all the unclean and filthy things that are out there in the world. And so don't take your lead from them. Oh no, they have no idea where they're going or where they've already ended up, because they've already, that scripture in Matthew 7 that speaks of the elect, the few who follow the narrow way that leads to life, which is the Bible. And again, there's just few out of the whole. And then there's the broad way that leads to destruction that many go in there at. Well, it's no longer leading to destruction. It has led to destruction. We have arrived at the destruction that God warned about. It's no longer, this is a dangerous path for me to travel if I continue on. The end of this is going to be my destruction. No, you have gotten there. You've reached it. You've reached it. The broad way, the inclusive way. We would say, all inclusive, except for the one true way, and who is Christ, who is the Bible. But all other paths, secular paths, atheistic paths, religious paths, everything under the sun is included, and it has delivered man to its final destination, destruction. We are living in the day of destruction. We see destruction all around us in society. That's what's happening with, all the transgenderisms and the gay marriage. It's destruction of the marriage institution. It's destruction of the family, destruction of human society, life on earth. When men don't know that they're men and women do not know that they're women, you're not looking at destruction of family and of human society in the future. You have it. You have it. You've gotten there. And of course, that's just one one indicator. There's so many indicators that we have entered into Judgment Day, and Judgment Day is the time when God destroys the wicked of the world. He destroys the whole world finally on the last day, and before that there's spiritual destruction, just like the church destroyed itself over the course of that 23 years of God's judgment on them spiritually. They with with their doctrine, with their gospels. Okay, we're going to open up the phone lines and we'll take the first caller tonight. Welcome to our question and answer program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
You're a little low or maybe distant. Can you speak directly into your phone?
Yes. How about now? Is it a little better now?
That's better.
Great. It's a beautiful day here in Pennsylvania. And I'm really happy that we can have this Q&A time. If I could, I have two questions. My first question is, in respect to 2033, and looking at the timeline of history, we've learned about the double portion, the doubling of the 23-year judgment, which first came on the churches and now on the world. And we also learned about the 40 stripes, which points to 2033. And after some discussion, we were telling each other about there's mounting biblical evidence that points to 2033. And we know there's no other dates for at least another, I think, 130 years, something to that effect. My question is there a possibility that 2033 could not be the date, and yet the timeline, the double portion, and the 40 stripes still be biblically sound? And I think the answer is yes. God would just have to give more information. But could that all still hold up?
Excuse me.
And I have a follow-up after.
Well, we see all the biblical evidence come together and point to 2033. And it's like when a time path is a doctrine. It's a teaching from the Bible. And when we're developing any kind of doctrine, teaching from the Bible, we look for biblical evidence. And we find, okay, I guess the atonement of Jesus, that he paid for sin at the foundation of the world is a good example. At first, well, we heard of Revelation 13:8, the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world, and then maybe a couple of other supporting verses, Hebrews 4:3, Hebrews 9:26, and we start to learn and develop the doctrine, and it takes shape. And when you have something that's true, typically you'll learn more, and it will fill out and strengthen. And that's what has happened over the last, I don't know when it first came out, 12 to 15 years or something, that we've been continuing to search the Bible, and we find all kinds of additional confirmation. The whole idea, we can see it so clearly. There must have been bloodshed for the Old Testament saints. What Hebrews chapter 9 tells us that the covenant is not in effect until there is the death of the testator, and just all kinds of information. I know in studying the Bible over these years and going verse by verse, every now and then a verse comes up and it adds support. It just adds, this is in view here as well. And that's what we would expect to see. So with 2033, we have major time paths. From the cross, 33 AD to 2033, very direct, very obvious time path, 2,000 years. We also have the time path from creation to 2033 that matches. It's identical, only spaced apart by 2,000 years, because there was an earlier time path from creation to the cross in 33 AD, 11,045 slash 46 years, because you can look at it as calendar years or actual years. Creation 2033, 13,045 slash 46 years. Now, those kinds of time paths are powerful because they prove correct with the first coming of Christ. And you know, from creation to the cross, that was the actual number of years. So you had the fullness of thousands, and then you had this 45 slash 46 year period. Same thing when you go to 2033, and we know 1988 was the 13,000th year, and from 88 to 1988 to 2033 is 45 years, or you could say 46 inclusive, and so it is a powerful time path. It has precedent for being correct, hitting the bullseye in 33 AD. And then, you know, with 2011, we had the time path from the flood, and it was an exact 7,000 years. One day is 1,000 years. And it landed on 2011, May 21, 2011, 7,000 years. And yet, that did begin Judgment Day for the world, but it didn't end the world. The world is continue on for these years. And 2011 was significant because from 1988, the end of the church age, to 2011 is 23 years. And 23 years. And Mr. Camping in his writings saw the 23-year tribulation, the 7,000 timeline falling on May 21, 2011, and thought that will be the year the world ends. But if we look at the historical precedent, creation to the cross, fullness of thousands of years, 11,000 plus 45 slash 46. Then the completion of Christ's first coming, it was complete. In 2011, we were at 13,023. 13,023. It didn't match perfectly with the first coming. Oh, but there's a second tribulation. Judgment and tribulation are synonyms. We always knew there were two tribulations or two judgments. Judgment begins at the house of God, great tribulation, judgment on the world. We just never thought to call it a tribulation, but two tribulations. And the second tribulation is like the first, a little shorter, 22 actual years, May 21, 2011 until an as yet unspecified date in the year 2033. And it's also 23 inclusive, so we can have that tribulation number to assure us it's a tribulation. And that gives us this exact parallel to the first coming of Christ, to the completion from creation to the first coming of this 45 slash 46 years. And now we have 13,045 slash 46 years to 2033. And it fits very strongly. It adds to the time path of Jesus 33 AD to 2033. We could also go to the flood, 7,000 years to 2011, but to 2033, 7,023 calendar years from the flood. That is another mighty blow or a mighty piece of evidence, because it too has biblical precedent. Creation to the flood, 6,023 years. Flood to the cross in 33 AD, 5,023 calendar years. Flood, 2033, 7,023 calendar years. Now, if you just had any one of these, if you just had the creation to 2033 by itself, or Christ going to the cross in 33 AD to 2033 by itself, or the flood to 2033 by itself, that would be weighty evidence that would be due consideration. But all three together, and that's not the least of it. That's really the big pieces. There's a whole bunch more, but not that quite, as far as the enormity of those time pass. But those three together is biblical evidence, and the longer we go, the more we find. For instance, concerning the 45-46, if we go to Judges chapter 10, we find there are two judges, and by the way, I learned about this in Mr. Camping's book. I think it was Are You Ready? Could have been 1990, but I think it was Are You Ready? Where he laid this out. In Judges 10, we read in verse 1, and after Abimelech, there arose to defend Israel Tola, the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, and he dwelt in Shamir in Mount Ephraim. And he judged Israel 23 years and died and was buried in Shamir. Okay, so 23-year rule as a judge, what's the first thing we think of? Great Tribulation. The exact number of years for the judgment on the church. And then in verse 3, and after him rose Jair, a Gileadite, and judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons that rode on 30 ass colts, and they had 30 cities, which are called Havoth Jair unto this day, which are in the land of Gilead. And Jair died and was buried in Cana. Now, what Mr. Camping wrote, and this was before 1994, in I think the book Are You Ready? He wrote that the first judge ties in with the Great Tribulation, the 23 years. The second judge, Jair, identifies with the second coming of Christ, and his sons, the 30 sons, points to Christ coming with his saints. All right, now, again, I didn't come up with that, but as soon as I saw it, I probably read it many times in the past, but since, recently in the last several years when we've been looking at 2033, I kind of saw it with new eyes, and I thought, two tribulations, two judgments. And you have the first, the Great Tribulation, Mr. Camping's correct, and the second, 22 years total, 45 years. 45 years, and Jair is a type of Christ, and his 30 sons, 3 times 10, the complete purpose of God for the sons of God, they judge with him. Christ comes with 10,000s of his saints, and the saints judge the world with him. And now Mr. Camping had no solution for the 22 years. He didn't put, from what I remember, he didn't put 1/4. But now here we are, and it matches perfectly. And so again, having the timeline, having this other evidence that, and also following the pattern of the Lord's first coming from the Jubilee year 7 BC to 33 AD. And here we have what we understand to be the second coming of Christ spiritually in the Jubilee year 1994 to officially begin the judgment on the church and his officially start his second coming as he came to judge the second time. 1994 to 2033, identical space of years from the first coming of Christ. Now, you have the creation date we mentioned. You have the flood date we mentioned. You have the exact 2,000 years from 33 AD to 2033 AD we mentioned. You have the 45 years of those two judges as, sort of just a piece of confirmation. And you have the identical space of years, each one, 7 BC, 1994, first coming, second coming, beginning in a jubilee, going to a year, 33 AD, 2033 AD, that everything's exactly 2,000 years. 7 BC to 1994 is 2,000 years. 33 AD to 2033 is 2,000 years. Therefore, an identical space of time, 33 AD concludes with the Lord Jesus' resurrection going up. 2033, what are we looking at when it comes to the end of time, the last day? The resurrection and the rapture of all the saints of God going up. And it is powerful. And there's much more that we can add to this. And so my personal belief is I think 2033 will be the end. And I don't think 2034 is going to come based on this biblical evidence. But I'm not going to say absolutely. So if someone wants to say, well, what if 20? Okay, you can say that. You can say that. And but just look at the bleakness of any kind of future projection, talking about 100 years, to go 100 days beyond 2033. It's as bleak as anything could be with the direction of the world, and the world's never going to recover. The world's descent into the depths of depravity, it appears bottomless, and there will be no remedy for the world, no recovery, just like there was none for the church. It just, boggles the mind to think of life in this world continuing beyond that date, beyond that year. We can see, God's purposes. I can see God's purposes. If it goes beyond, well, if we're saying, if it's 2034 or 2035, and we're saying, well, 1994 is the Jubilee and the second coming of Christ, then you are beyond, well, in 2035, you would be beyond 40 years. And so the whole idea of 3940 stripes would not apply. Did you have another question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Something happened. You're far away again.
About now, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's good.
So with progressive revelation, we can assume that the Lord Jesus will continue to guide us in truth, and it'll get brighter and brighter as we get closer to the end with more proofs. So we have to wait on him and not be troubled if we don't have the exact information. And that being said, in terms of the rapture, if I can, you can tell me if I can't ask this question, because there seems to be 3 other callers. I can call in some other time for that.
Well, it's up to you. you're welcome to ask, or we can go to the next person. It's up to you.
I'll go to the next person because it's a doozy. Thanks, Chris.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for calling and sharing. And let's go to the next person on the phone tonight. Welcome to our question and answer program.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Chris. Could you explain 1 John chapter 3, 4 through 9?
Okay. 1 John 3, beginning in verse 4. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. And ye know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. Whosoever abideth in him sinneth not. Whosoever sinneth hath not seen him, neither known him. Little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. He that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Whosoever is born of God does not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin, because he is born of God. So you just want me to try and explain that?
Yes, because it's verse 9, whoever has been born of God does not sin. And
Right.
we know we're in this body that hasn't been changed yet, and so we still sin. So this, when I was reading this, I got concerned and thought, oh, I thought we would sin in this body until we're changed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there are some who they preach sinless perfection. You know, after you're saved, they say that kind of thing, and of course that's not right. Remember what it says in 1 John. In 1 John, in chapter 1 John 1, verse 8, if we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. And this is a good example how God wrote the Bible. It's not that far, chapter 3 from chapter 1. And,
right.
and someone could easily recall, well, Lord, you just said if we say we're without sin, we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. And here, whosoever is born of God does not commit sin. So which is it?
That's why I'm calling you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I'm confused.
I'm just, I'm not throwing it back at you. I'm just,
No.
I'm just showing the problem, the apparent contradiction that, people say the Bible's full of contradictions because they, read these and God doesn't intentionally, as a trap for some people. Well, can't even keep that straight. What else can God not keep straight? But there is an answer. The answer is that when we become born again, we receive a new heart and a new spirit, a new soul that is perfect. It is without sin. It's sinless. And so 1 John 3:9 is referring to that. Whosoever is born of God does not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of God. Only God isn't specifying where we cannot sin. We're unusual creature man, we're unusual because we have these two parts. We have body and soul, and so when we become born again, God in his wisdom determined to save us in soul first. And that's how it is in this world. Everyone who becomes saved is saved in their soul, but he leaves the body in sin, which is why the body continues to age. It can, it can be struck with illness and finally die. The body seeing corruption. It's the working of sin in the physical body that leads to our physical death. And that's what 1 John is saying. Even after salvation, we're still in the body. So if we say that we have no sin, that is, we're born again, no sin in our spirit, but we still cannot say we do not have sin because we're one whole personality. Strangely, this new perfect heart spiritually, and the old man, the old fleshly body. And so sin resides in the flesh, but the spirit is completely perfect, righteous. And that's why. I'm sorry?
God doesn't look at our sin that we commit from this body, sinful body.
Well, he already paid for those too. When Christ died, he died for all of our sin. Only the application, Jesus paid for all of our sin, and his blood was in the basin, as it were, and the word applied it to us. And when God saved us through the hearing of the word and applied the shed blood of Christ to us, he washed away all of our sin, but determined only to make our spirit or soul new at that point, with a future promise to apply the same, it's the completion of salvation. So it's the application of the same blood. Well, no, I don't know if we can say that. It is the completion of our salvation. On the last day, we receive new resurrected bodies, new resurrected spiritual bodies. And that's how it had to be. If the Lord saved us in both body and soul at once, while we still lived in the world, we would have a new glorified spiritual body. And, people of the world, they already sense that there's something wrong with us because we have a new soul, that shines forth a light of Christ, really, as we begin to live after the Bible, the manner that God would have us to live, and living uprightly to any degree shines the light of the darkness of the world. Imagine we had a new resurrected spiritual body like Jesus showed forth on the Mount of Transfiguration. We're shining with the brilliance of the sun. Well, how are we going to be a messenger? How are we going to get near anyone? We walk down the street, people would just like Moses. Remember Moses coming down from the mount? He didn't receive a new resurrected body at that point. He was just in the presence of God, and his face shone, and he had to put a veil because the people wouldn't get near him. So it was necessary for God to do it in two parts. Save the soul, the part that no man can see with physical eyes. Save the soul, and it also continues to make it by faith, and the whole matter of living for Christ, and sometimes when we sin, we come before the Lord. Oh Lord, like David, am I really born again? Because we're only saved in soul, we can seriously ask those questions and wonder how, if I'm saved, could I have done this sin and so forth. And it's, the Lord in his wisdom, he has a lot of reasons for it, but two-part salvation. Salvation of the soul is complete at this time for all the elect. On the last day, it's a day of salvation. We'll receive salvation of the body, and then we'll be one new spirit, whole personality, all spirit, once again. Now, just one last thing. Remember in Romans 7, when Paul was speaking of sin in his life, and Paul's a pattern of the believer, so he's really speaking for all of us. In Romans 7:17, now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh. See, he's pinpointing it. It's not in his soul. It's not in his spirit. It's in the flesh. In me, in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. For the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I find then a law, that when I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man, made new in the spirit, but I see another law in my members, and the members are the flesh, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death, the fleshly body? And that's what we're looking forward to. And another reason why the people of God look to the last day or the end of the world. We're still looking to our salvation. We're looking for the salvation of the body, for, people who say they're Christians and to have no interest, and not no interest, but to be hostile against the idea of looking for the coming of Christ and the completion of all things. It's as though they have no interest in the completion of their salvation. And that shouldn't be.
I know. I was going to say, could that person still be unsaved, saying something like that? Because I want to leave this world. I'm looking forward to it so much. I think we have to wait another 9 years. That seems like 9,000 to me.
Well, don't let any, secular psychologists hear you say that.
Oh,
but,
no.
But you see, the world psychology is different than God's psychology, than the Bible psychology.
Totally.
The world has its philosophies of life. And in the Bible, the Apostle Paul, again, a pattern of the believers, was moved by God to write, to die is gain. It's gain, and especially for the end to come. Now, to die at any time is gain, because your soul, that living part of us, goes into heaven. It's qualified. It's perfect. Goes into heaven to be with the Lord. The body goes into the ground. It's still unsaved, not qualified. And on the last day, to look forward to the last day, you're looking forward to not just your soul, but the whole part of you, the whole being, to be saved and to be, with God in the fullness of His glory, and to be equipped with a new resurrected body. So it is not morose. It is not anything negative for a child of God. And this, so many in the world and in the churches don't understand. They're afraid of the whole discussion. They're terrified, some of them, at the thought of the end of the world, because to them it's just like physical death. It's the end of their existence, but that's not true of God's people. We're not
No,
looking to
no.
the end. We're looking to the beginning of a future eternity.
I'm looking forward to it. I want out of this world. I don't, whenever the Lord's ready to take me, I want to go, because I don't like living in this sin-cursed world now, but we have to. God has us here. He has a reason to keep us here for now, so I accept it, but
right.
Looking forward to leaving.
We also, we would never do anything to speed it up. It's in God's hands. We live to the glory of God while we live. While we live, we have a purpose, we have meaning, we have a whole bunch to do, that the Lord has given for us to do at this time. And we leave timing for when the Lord will take us in God's hands, but still, again, it's a comfort to know. Talk about a security blanket. If something happens to us, it's not the worst. Well, it's the worst for the unsaved. It's very sad. It's a sorrowful thing when they pass away. Going to an individual who gave no evidence of being a child of God and going to their funeral, it's always so sad. But going to the funeral of someone who lived as a child of God and lived with hope, well, we bury them.
We're happy for them.
Very much like putting a seed in the ground, because there's life's going to come from that seed. It's a dead thing now. It's a dead thing, and yet life will spring forth, and we have good hope, a good expectation.
Yes, I know God's in control, and He's in charge, and He'll take us when He's ready to take us, and I accept that, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So,
was there something else?
I was going to say real quick, I had some Christian friends in the past when we used to gather together, and they would say, well, I don't think I'm saved. That used to upset me. They just didn't think they were saved. They were, maybe they just thought they sinned too much, or I don't know why. They just would say, I don't think I'm saved.
Assurance of salvation it's a spiritual gift. It has to come from God. There's a whole lot of people in the church world. I guess estimates, the last estimate I heard, maybe has changed. Last estimate I heard was there's about 2 billion professed Christians in the world. And that's and if you ask them, probably vast majority, so we're talking about hundreds of millions and maybe 1.5 billion or whatever. If you say, are you saved? Yes, I'm saved. They're sure of it. And so assurance of salvation, because we see the corruption, the apostasy. We know what the Bible teaches about the separation of wheat and tares and bundling the tares, leaving them in the churches. And so people being assured in their own mind isn't true assurance. The nature of man is self-deception. And so there's assurance that comes from God. That is the assurance we want, where we're not the one going to, comfort ourselves, but we leave it in God's hands, and it's a spiritual gift from the Spirit. And so we could, if anyone lacks assurance, they could go to God and say, "Oh Lord, Could it be that you would grant me assurance of my salvation? And then the Spirit testifies to our spirit, is the language of Romans 8. And then we can have that true biblical assurance. But thank
Yeah,
you.
we live by faith, and it has to be Christ's faith that's in us.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you
Okay,
for
Chris.
calling and sharing, the scriptures as well as all of your comments. And now let's go to the next person on the phone tonight. Welcome to our open forum program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so I was looking at 2 Samuel chapter 21, and I'm going to cut this down because actually it's the first 9 verses, and I know we don't want to read all those, but can you read verses 3 through 6 and then 8 and 9?
2 Samuel 21, starting in verse 3. Well, actually, yeah, I'm going to start in verse 1, just to kind of refamiliarize myself. Then there was a famine in the days of David, 3 years, year after year. And David inquired of Jehovah, and Jehovah answered, "It is for Saul and for his bloody house, because he slew the Gibeonites." And the king called the Gibeonites and said unto them, "Now the Gibeonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites, and the children of Israel had sworn unto them. And Saul sought to slay them in his zeal to the children of Israel and Judah. Wherefore David said unto the Gibeonites, What shall I do for you? And wherewith shall I make the atonement, that ye may bless the inheritance of Jehovah? And the Gibeonites said unto him, We will have no silver nor gold of Saul, nor of his house, neither for us shalt thou kill any man in Israel. And he said, What ye shall say, that will I do for you. And they answered the king, The man that consumed us, and that devised against us that we should be destroyed from remaining in any of the coast of Israel, let 7 men of his sons be delivered unto us, and we will hang them up unto Jehovah in Gibeah of Saul, whom Jehovah did choose. And the king said, I will give them. But the king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of Jehovah's oath. It was between them, between David and Jonathan, the son of Saul. But the king took the 2 sons of Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, whom she bare unto Saul, Armoni and Mephibosheth, and the 5 sons of Michal, the daughter of Saul, whom she brought up for Adriel, the son of Barzillai, the Maholathite, and he delivered them into the hands of the Gibeonites, and they hanged them in the hill before Jehovah, and they fell all 7 together, and were put to death in the days of harvest, and the first days in the beginning of barley harvest.
Okay, so first thing, because I want to know the spiritual, what is the spiritual picture of the 7? But I did find something out about, of course, if we go to chapter 6, we know that Michal was pretty much banished. She didn't have any children. So when I looked at this verse, right, where she brought up, she midwifed, is what I believe she was a midwife to these 5 boys, okay? Because she did not have sons, because David basically made her childless. It was he proclaimed that she was going to be put away, and he didn't go into her. But my question is, these 7, okay, that were hanged, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking about the 7 churches, and I'm thinking about in verse 9, where they all fall together. They're put to death, which reminds me of the sons of Haman, but they're put together in the days of harvest, in the first days, in the beginning of the harvest. So I was hoping you could shed a little light as to what they represent here.
Well, yeah, I think you have the right idea with the 7 churches. Saul is a figure of the corporate church, so it would make sense also that his sons would be. And the Gibeonites represent the elect. Remember Joshua 9, when it was the men from Gibeon. Is it Joshua 9? Yeah. They came feigning themselves as though they came from a far country, but they were at a nearby city, and the leaders of Israel made a pact with them that they would not be destroyed, and so the people of Gibeon became a part of Israel, only they were servants. As it says in Joshua 9 in verse 20, this we will do to them. We will even let them live, lest wrath be upon us because of the oath which we swear unto them. And the princes said unto them, excuse me, let them live, but let them be hewers of wood and drawers of water unto all the congregation, as the princesses promised them. And that's a good picture of the believer, because we're messengers. We're messengers. We're spared. God doesn't destroy us. And the conquest of the land of Canaan, destroying all of the cities like Jericho and all the inhabitants, points to the people of the world. And within the world, you have Gibeon. You have these who will become servants to the congregation of Israel, come running with the water. Here's some water for you, and that's what we were over the course of the day of salvation. We were water carriers, messengers, and servants of God. And so Saul, he put them to death. He wasn't favorable to the Gibeonites because Saul represented the corporate church. He was a figure of the tares within the congregations. And the tares are under the power of Satan. And when Satan would take over a church and it would become a synagogue of Satan, as we read of the 7 churches in Revelation 2 and 3, or as one of the 7, then there would be persecution of the saints. Because when you have professed Christians and, force is put to bear spiritually, doctrinally, they tend to bend the knee. It's normally the 7,000 that will not bow down to Baal, and they could be driven out of the churches even hundreds of years ago over the course of the church age. And what John 16 says, that they'll drive you out of the synagogue and kill you, as that's the equivalent, spiritual equivalent to being driven out is spiritually equivalent to being killed.
Yes.
And so the Gibeonites are killed by Saul, and David comes to them, and they are going because of a famine. There's a famine in the land, and by the way, there is also a solution here, where it says there was a famine in the land, a famine in the days of David 3 years. In 2 Samuel, in 2 Samuel 24, where they number Israel, and they say what will happen. Where is that? 2 Samuel 24. Oh yeah, verse 12. Go and say unto David, thus saith Jehovah, I offer thee 3 things, choose thee one of them, that I may do it unto thee. So Gad came to David and told him and said unto him, Shall 7 years of famine come unto thee in thy land? Or wilt thou flee 3 months before thine enemies, while they pursue thee? Or that there be 3 days pestilence in thy land? Now compare that to 1 Chronicles 21, and we find a difference. This is the parallel account, 1 Chronicles 21 and verse 10. Go and tell David, saying, Thus saith Jehovah, I offer thee 3 things. Choose thee one of them, that I may do it unto thee. So Gad came to David and said unto him, Thus saith Jehovah, choose thee either 3 years famine or 3 months to be destroyed before thy foes. And the other, in 2 Samuel 24, it said 7 years. And the answer is that it was 3 years. And when the Bible says 3 years, it can be 3.5. And I won't go there, but we can prove that from the famine in the days of Elijah. One place says 3 years, and I think in James it tells us it was 3 years, space of 3 years and 6 months. So there was an earlier famine in the reign of David, with this problem with the Gibeonites of probably 3.5 years. And then when he numbered the people, a second famine, 3.5 years, totaling 7 years, is in view, and that explains the difference. But the Gibeonites represent the elect. They're going to David, who is Christ, and basically crying out that we want vengeance.
Right.
We want you to avenge us.
Mhm.
And David does so, and this would fit in with Matthew 23. Matthew 23, that says of all the wise men killed upon the earth. In verse 34, wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. And so the souls of the saints under the altar,
Yes, that's what I was thinking
Revelation
too.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah, avenge. How long before you avenge us? And that's basically what the Gibeonites are saying. They're crying out for blood. Avenge our blood. Our blood, the blood of the saints has been shed, and David will do so by slaying these 7 sons of Saul, the 7 churches. And then the famine fits in, because there's famine, and David, in order to basically heal the land, and the land cries out for blood, for the blood that's been shed, as it says in Numbers 35. So David slays these 7, sheds their blood, and then notice it rains. In verse 10 of 2 Samuel 21, and Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it for her upon the rock, from the beginning of harvest until water dropped upon them out of heaven, and suffered neither the birds of the air to rest on them by day, nor the birds of the field by night, until water dropped on them. And so we have famine, slaying of the 7, and finally the water comes. And that, I think that would point to the 2300 evening mornings famine,
Yep.
followed by latter rain.
Yep.
And of course, that's the official end of the church age. So hanging the 7, they're accursed. And the church became accursed. God brought judgment on the church. He poured out his wrath, and it does a lot of things. It satisfies the cries for vengeance of blood, and it causes, or it leads to the rain falling.
Yeah, that clears up a lot, because I was really I really looked at the fact that when they were hanged, they were put to death in the days of harvest. It says in the first days. But
Yeah.
so that would go hand in hand with the latter rain, right? The
Yeah.
first days, right?
Yeah.
Because okay.
Right. And it's also, that time, separation of wheat and tares. Your harvest you do after the fruit is grown.
Right.
So over that, from 94 to 2011, the wheat was coming out.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Oh,
that.
you're welcome. Thank you for sharing this very interesting passage. And let's go. Oh, that was our last caller today. Okay. Well, I would like to thank everyone for joining us. I hope everyone can be with us tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow's Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern Time. Normally, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, except Wednesday when it's 12 noon on the East Coast and 9 a.m. On the West Coast will be our next open forum. But for now, may you have a good night, and may the Lord's perfect will be done.
Thanks again for joining us for E-Bible Fellowship's live open forum program. You can call in with your Bible questions Mondays and Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesdays beginning at noon Eastern.